Spiral is the story of Detective Zeke Banks and his rookie partner who take charge of a grisly investigation into the murders that are eerily reminiscent of the city's gruesome past with Jigsaw. When it comes to this movie, I had really little expectations because in 2017, there was the film Jigsaw that was supposed to reinvent and bring back the love of Saw, the franchise that everybody loved. Well, really the only one movie that people loved, and then 7 other movies that sucked. There has just been, in my opinion, no other Saw film that has competed with the first one. It was so clever, it was so unique, and it wasn't all about the gore. There was actual wit behind that movie. Now, hopefully, with this film, Spiral, that is actually produced, and it was Chris Rock's idea, he came to the studio and said, "This is my take for Saw's franchise." And they were like, here's a bunch of money, let's do it. And they brought back one of the previous directors of the Saw films to come back and do this. And I gotta say, this movie has some interesting ideas. I will say this right out of the bat. The gore and the death in this movie is really, really good. It's really entertaining. Overall, this film has an entertaining, high-octane vibe. It feels like the volume for this film is all the way up. In every single scene, there is just something happening. There is something to get you on the edge of your seat with your popcorn and your drink, and you're not necessarily bored throughout this entire film, and that's pretty good. I gotta say, I enjoyed my overall experience in the sense of not being bored. And the other thing that I thought was cool and kind of different and unique was the take on the cops in this film. I thought it was definitely more of a centered film. Like, the other movies definitely had cops and revolved around their lives, but overall with this movie, it just felt more connected. And the last thing that I really enjoyed about this movie was the ending, the very, very ending. Because it takes this idea of what could be potentially a good sequel. Because at that moment, I could see what he's trying to do with this franchise. And I have to say, I love with what they did with not necessarily the reveal of the villain, and I'll get to that in a minute. Like, I basically just understand why the villain is doing this, why this new Jigsaw is behind all this. It just made sense to me, and I really honestly digged what they were going for, especially when the credits roll. I was screaming, I kind of want a sequel for this. Now to go into the negatives, the number one thing that just did not work for me was the predictability of the villain. It was just so blatantly obvious who this copycat Jigsaw was. And the other thing that I didn't really like about this new take on Jigsaw was the voice. It just didn't work for me. It sounded a little bit too lame. I don't know how else to put it. It just wasn't the same feel. And now I understand that they're trying to do something different, but it just didn't really work for me. And the other thing that just didn't quite work for me in this movie was sadly Chris Rock. I feel like he just wasn't meant for this role, and I admire the heck out of him for trying this. And maybe it's due to the director, maybe it was his fault, maybe they should have done more takes, maybe they should have gone a different direction with this character, but it felt like he was yelling all the time, like how I said about how all the scenes are super high volume, like everything is high octane. His character, it just was a little bit too much. It felt like over the top acting. With that being said, the comedy in this film is not funny, and I don't think that comedy should be in this franchise. Now, with this new take, they probably thought, all the other movies are way too serious. Let's lighten up a little bit. Let's try something unique and different, and for that, I will respect for the effort. But when it comes down to the execution, no laughs given here. So overall, Spiral has some intriguing ideas that leads to a more interesting potential sequel that I would love to watch, especially with how they ended Chris Rock's character and the new Jigsaw and what that could mean for the future. I'm all for it. But it's sadly just taken a huge step back with a big miscast of Chris Rock, the humor that just doesn't land, and the predictability in this story. And for that, I'm going to give Spiral a 5.5 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching my review. It really means a lot. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and also don't forget to be blessed.